There's something unsettling about a scene that doesn't feel scripted. A look held a second too long, a scream that doesn't match the dialogue, a hand that shakes but not from performance. Cinema is built on illusion, on rehearsals and lighting cues, on dialogue fine-tuned to perfection. But what happens when the footage that makes it to the final cut wasn't planned at all? In the history of filmmaking, there are moments, fragments of scenes that defy categorization. Sometimes they come from camera tests, sometimes from exhausted rehearsal runs. Sometimes no one remembers filming them at all. Yet these moments end up in the final cut, raw and unfiltered, carrying with them a strange, unplaceable weight. And when audiences watch them, something inside whispers, "That wasn't acting." Some of these incidents are brushed off as improvisation. Others are quietly ignored in press tours and interviews. But dig deeper, and you'll find cast members disturbed by what they saw, directors who swear they never called action, and footage that seems to have filmed itself. No scripts, no cues, just something real. Today, we're stepping into those spaces, into 15 films where the most unforgettable scenes weren't carefully choreographed but spontaneously captured. Whether by mistake, by possession, or by something no one wants to name, these behind-the-scenes moments were too intense, too honest, or too terrifying to leave on the cutting room floor. Were these moments the result of method acting taken too far? Or did the camera catch something that was never meant to be seen? Behind the precision of cinema lies something unpredictable. A rehearsal that bleeds into reality, a reaction that was never meant to be filmed, a presence in the background no one remembers placing. These 15 moments remind us that even in a world built on control, the camera sometimes captures what no one intended and what no one can explain. So what do you think? Were these scenes the result of artistic genius, emotional breakdowns, or something far stranger? Was it just raw humanity slipping through the cracks? Or were we watching something not scripted at all? Let us know which moment unsettled you the most. Have you spotted other scenes that felt too real to be fiction? Drop your theories in the comments. Like, subscribe, and join us in the shadows, because here at Darkroom Cinema, the truth is always hiding in the final cut. The Passion of the Christ, 2004. The lightning strike wasn't planned. During the filming of The Passion of the Christ, actor Jim Caviezel, who portrayed Jesus, was struck by lightning, not once, but twice. It happened while shooting the Sermon on the Mount scene and again during the crucifixion. The crew didn't stop. In fact, the second strike was caught on film, but never acknowledged in the final edit. The take was used. Caviezel suffered hypothermia, a dislocated shoulder, and a lung infection throughout the shoot. But the lightning strike became legend. Director Mel Gibson later described the event as a sign, though he never clarified what kind. The scene in question shows Caviezel staring upward, battered, barely moving, lips whispering lines. The intensity? Not entirely acted. Something real, something electric had happened. Was it coincidence? Or something watching? Come and see 1985. The boy's expression wasn't directed. In Elem Klimov's Come and See, 4-year-old Alexei Kravchenko delivers a performance so harrowing that many believed it was impossible without some kind of manipulation. And they were right, sort of. To achieve the boy's haunting stare in the final scenes, Klimov reportedly fired live ammunition near the actor, destroyed props without warning, and created panic on set. Kravchenko aged visibly throughout the film, his face transforming from childlike softness to hollow despair. By the final shot, his expression is blank, haunted, beyond acting. It's a look no coach can teach. Years later, Kravchenko admitted he still had nightmares from the experience. Come and See didn't just depict trauma, it induced it. Was this the price of realism in wartime cinema? Or did the film go somewhere it never shoulda? Synecdoche, New York, 2008. The eulogy that hit too close. At one point in Synecdoche, New York, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character listens to a monologue about death, aging, and the inevitability of being forgotten. It's hauntingly intimate, too personal for fiction, and it wasn't scripted word for word. Director Charlie Kaufman had given general guidelines, but actor Tom Noonan improvised much of the dialogue, drawing from real grief and personal reflections. Hoffman, caught off guard, didn't interrupt. He sat in silence, visibly affected. His eyes didn't blink. His breath slowed. That reaction? It stayed in the final cut. What makes the scene eerie in hindsight is knowing Hoffman himself would pass away just a few years later. Watching it now feels like an emotional premonition, an echo of what was to come. When art imitates life, and life folds back into the frame, where do we separate the two? Requiem for a Dream, 2000, Ellen Burstyn's monologue wasn't rewritten. She sits in a chair, clutching a cup, speaking of television appearances and red dresses. Her voice is fragile, teetering between hope and delusion. It's Ellen Burstyn's monologue, the heart of Requiem for a Dream, and it wasn't part of the original plan. Director Darren Aronofsky had written a general outline, but when Burstyn began to speak, she improvised the entire sequence. No script, no retakes, just pure, character-driven agony spilling out in one take. The crew didn't move. Aronofsky didn't dare interrupt. Her words describing loneliness, fear, the ache of being forgotten were so raw that they stunned everyone in the room, and then silence. The take was kept as is. No edits, no polish. Because how do you improve on truth? In a film filled with stylized editing and sensory overload, that quiet, real moment stands out like a wound. Was it acting or a glimpse into something far deeper and darker? Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. That hammer hit wasn't faked. It's one of the rawest moments in horror. A character struggles on the floor as Leatherface tries and fails to deliver a clean blow with a sledgehammer. The actor twitches, convulses, as the killer strikes again. The reason it looks so chaotic? Because it was. The actor playing the victim, William Vale, was reportedly losing consciousness during filming due to heat, dehydration, and exhaustion. Director Tobe Hooper's low-budget production offered no real safety net. The hammer was supposed to be rubber, but it slipped. Vale was stunned, his reactions became frantic, and Gunnar Hansen, playing Leatherface, wasn't sure how to stop the scene. Hooper yelled to keep rolling. The panic stayed, and it worked. The finished product felt like a snuff film, not a horror movie. It terrified audiences, and still does. But those few seconds came at the cost of a real breakdown. Can a movie be too authentic for its own good? Jacob's Ladder, 1990. The gurney scene wasn't rehearsed. In one of the most unsettling sequences in Jacob's Ladder, Tim Robbins' character is wheeled down a grimy hospital corridor, strapped to a gurney, as flickering lights reveal twisted figures and shadowy doctors. But Robbins's expression, panic, confusion, silent pleading wasn't part of the acting plan. Director Adrian Lyne decided to surprise him. The production crew altered the lighting, added unplanned visual shocks, and instructed extras in disturbing costumes to reach toward Robbins without telling him beforehand. He was restrained for real, couldn't see clearly, and had no idea what was coming next. The result? The gurney ride felt like a descent into hell, and the fear on Robbins' face wasn't performative. It was primal, genuine, and it became one of the most memorable horror sequences of the 1990 seconds. Lyne would later say he wanted the actor trapped in the moment. But when a director traps someone for a reaction, is it still performance? Or is it induced trauma? Did Jacob's Ladder uncover new ways to portray psychological horror, or just blur the line between actor and victim? Rosemary's Baby, 1968. The street scene wasn't closed. Mia Farrow steps into New York traffic, visibly pregnant, terrified, and trying to escape a force she doesn't yet understand. The cars screech, horns blare, and she just keeps walking. Director Roman Polanski didn't have permits to close the street. He simply told Farrow to walk into real traffic, camera hidden, and keep going. If she got hit, he said, it would be his problem with the insurance, and so she did. That expression of fear, confusion, and disbelief, it wasn't acting. It was a woman walking through actual danger, trusting that no one would run her over. The shot stayed in the film. Critics praised its realism. Farrow, however, called it one of the most nerve-wracking things she'd ever done on camera. Was the scene effective, or just reckless filmmaking disguised as bravery? Deliverance, 1972. That squeal wasn't fully scripted. The infamous squeal like a pig scene in Deliverance is etched into the psyche of American cinema. But the line, the tension, the unbearable realism wasn't fully in the screenplay. Actor Ned Beatty, in his first major film role, was thrown into the deep end. Director John Boorman encouraged the antagonist to improvise, and Beatty wasn't fully prepared. The shaking, the horror, the resistance that wasn't rehearsal, that was raw, exposed vulnerability. Beatty would later describe it as the hardest day of my life, emotionally and psychologically. The scene became legendary, but at what cost? The realism wasn't crafted, it was extracted. To this day, the sequence sparks debate about exploitation, about artistic boundary, pushing, and about whether the pursuit of authenticity can go too far. Is the line between trauma and storytelling ever truly visible until it's already been crossed? A Clockwork Orange, 1971. The singing was improvised and disturbing. When Alex DeLarge begins singing "Singin' in the Rain" during a brutal home invasion scene, it's one of the most chilling juxtapositions in cinema history. But that line, that melody, it wasn't in the script. Stanley Kubrick was frustrated. The scene felt flat. Malcolm McDowell, trying to lighten the mood, began dancing and singing the classic tune almost mockingly. Kubrick didn't yell "cut." Instead, he encouraged it. The result was so disturbingly effective that the studio had to purchase the rights to the song retroactively. McDowell later revealed he didn't realize how twisted the moment had become until he saw the playback. The dissonance between joy and violence made the scene iconic, but it also blurred the ethics of improvisation. Gene Kelly, who immortalized the song, was reportedly furious and refused to speak to McDowell when they crossed paths years later. The damage was done. A cheerful song became forever associated with cinematic horror. Can a performance be too memorable so much that it ruins something once innocent? Eyes Wide Shut, 1999. The masked reaction that wasn't in the plan. Nicole Kidman's eyes told a different story. In Eyes Wide Shut, there's a moment when her character, Alicia, reacts to a confession about a sexual dream. Her eyes well up, but she doesn't blink. She barely moves. It's hypnotic, and it wasn't rehearsed. Kubrick, known for his punishing number of takes, had been pushing Kidman and Tom Cruise through days of emotional confrontation scenes. During one take, Kidman reportedly stopped responding to direction. She simply sat, staring into space, and let the tears come. Kubrick, instead of cutting, signaled the camera to keep rolling. The result was a moment of pure interior unraveling. The actress later said she couldn't recall fully. Cruise, watching from off-camera, didn't interrupt. It wasn't a scene anymore. It was a document of two people imploding on and off screen. That take? It's in the movie, right there between the fantasy and the confession. A single shot that feels too quiet to be fiction. Was Eyes Wide Shut about masks? Or about showing what actors can't hide? The Blair Witch Project, 1999. The panic wasn't always faked. They weren't supposed to get that lost, but they did. The Blair Witch Project was built on the illusion of found footage, but much of its power came from the real exhaustion, confusion, and fear of its actors. The directors gave them minimal food, misleading directions, and planted disturbing surprises in the forest at night without warning them. In one moment, Heather Donahue breaks down, crying directly into the camera, apologizing to her friends' families. It's shaky, it's raw, it became iconic. But it wasn't a scripted confession. It was a real moment of emotional distress, captured in the dead of night, when she genuinely believed something had gone wrong beyond filmmaking. The genius of Blair Witch wasn't just its lo-fi aesthetic, it was the thin, dissolving line between performance and panic, between control and chaos. The actors weren't always sure what was real, and neither were we. Did Blair Witch invent a new kind of horror by abandoning the line between actor and victim? Apocalypse Now, 1979. Martin Sheen's breakdown was real and dangerous. It was supposed to be a birthday scene. The actor was drunk, shirtless, standing in a Saigon hotel room replica. But Martin Sheen wasn't celebrating, he was unraveling. And Francis Ford Coppola kept filming. During the infamous opening sequence of Apocalypse Now, Sheen begins to punch a mirror, scream, cry, and collapse. What many viewers don't realize is that this wasn't a performance. Sheen was having a genuine psychological breakdown, one brought on by exhaustion, alcohol, and emotional collapse from months of intense filming in the Philippines. Coppola had been documenting rehearsals, hoping for something raw. What he got was far beyond what anyone anticipated. Sheen cut his hand on the broken mirror, smeared his blood on his face, and begged Coppola not to stop filming. The footage was so intense, some crew members reportedly left the set. Years later, Sheen admitted he had a heart attack not long after that scene. He didn't remember filming all of it. And Coppola? He used every frame. Was this cinema verite? Or the moment cinema turned into voyeurism? Poltergeist, 1982. That skeleton wasn't a prop. JoBeth Williams knew something was wrong. During the pool scene in Poltergeist, her character flails through the muddy water, surrounded by skeletal remains. The terror on her face was unforgettable, but it wasn't from acting. Unbeknownst to her, the props were real human skeletons. Special effects budgets were tight, and real skeletons sourced from medical suppliers were cheaper than building them from scratch. Williams only learned the truth after filming. That scene, meant to be another chaotic moment in a supernatural horror, turned into something far more disturbing. The reaction captured was genuine revulsion. Williams later admitted she felt cursed afterward, and she wasn't alone. Many crew members believed the use of real bones triggered the string of tragedies that followed: actor deaths, accidents, and the slow unraveling of those tied to the production. And yet, no one cut the scene. It was too effective, too intense, too horrifyingly authentic. Did the filmmakers accidentally summon something just by refusing to fake it? The Exorcist, 1973. That slap wasn't fake. During a quiet moment in The Exorcist, Father Karras sits with Regan's mother, trying to ground her grief. The scene is tense, but what happens next jolts even seasoned viewers. A sudden slap to the face and the visible shock on the actor's body. That reaction wasn't rehearsed. Director William Friedkin had pulled actor Jason Miller aside before the take and slapped him hard, then immediately rolled the camera. The result was a delayed, unfiltered reaction from Miller that read as both shock and fury. But the more disturbing moment came from Ellen Burstyn. In another take, she's yanked backward violently, slamming into a padded wall. The scream she lets out was real, and she injured her spine. Friedkin never told her how hard the pull would be. It wasn't acting. It was a documented injury, and yet the footage stayed. Behind the legacy of The Exorcist, the bans, the fainting audiences, the religious outcry there lies a quieter horror. The lengths it took to make the fear feel real, and sometimes reality hurt. At what point does performance end and violation begin? The Shining, 1980. Shelley's breakdown. Wasn't in the script. She wasn't supposed to scream like that. In fact, she wasn't even supposed to be in that emotional state. But as Shelley Duvall swung the bat, shaking and crying, something wasn't right, and Stanley Kubrick kept the cameras rolling. The Shining is notorious for its perfectionism. Kubrick pushed his actors to the brink, demanding dozens, sometimes over 100 takes for a single scene. But one rehearsal, never meant for final use, captured Duvall in a state of complete emotional collapse. Her hands trembled. Her eyes didn't look at Jack Nicholson. They pleaded with someone behind the lens. Kubrick had been isolating her for weeks. Crew members were told not to sympathize with her. Scripts were rewritten on the spot. And that particular rehearsal? It wasn't lit properly. It wasn't blocked, but it was real. And somehow, it made it into the final cut. In later interviews, Duvall described the experience as almost like torture. She wasn't acting, she was begging. And Kubrick, ever the perfectionist, saw the psychological breakdown not as a failure, but as cinematic gold. Was this a moment of artistic genius, or a director crossing a line that should have never been touched? The unknown clip in Three Men and a Baby, 1987. It was just a lighthearted comedy. A harmless 1,980 seconds hit about three bachelors and a baby. But one frame barely a second long changed everything. In one scene, as Ted Danson walks through an apartment hallway, the camera catches something in the background. A pale, motionless figure standing behind a curtain. It's not part of the plot. It's not acknowledged. And no actor or crew member remembers filming it. Viewers began calling it the Ghost Boy. Rumors spread that it was the spirit of a child who died in the apartment where the film was shot. Others claimed it was a cardboard cutout of Danson himself left behind accidentally. But the actual scene had no context for such a prop, and studio reps refused to comment for years. The footage isn't scary on its own, but the fact that no one knew it was there is what lingers. It made its way into the theatrical release, into VHS, into the cultural bloodstream. Some call it a hoax, others call it a glitch. But the face in the curtain has no script, no credit, and no explanation. Was it an editing oversight? Or the camera catching something it was never meant to see?